So we all know Sandy Cheeks, famous for her amazing karate skills, astronaut-looking outfit, and crazy inventions. But have you ever wondered what Sandy is doing in Bikini Bottom? Why would a squirrel from Texas choose to live underwater? And how does she even afford to live underwater, considering she doesn't have a job? Well, what if I told you that Sandy was secretly hired to study the residents of Bikini Bottom, and that she actually created Plankton's computer wife Karen to help her, which almost caused the destruction of the whole Bikini Bottom? So before we dive into this theory, we have to figure out why Sandy is living in Bikini Bottom. I mean, for a squirrel that's constantly singing about how she wants to go, oh, 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 what's keeping her in Bikini Bottom? Well, the answer lies in the episode Chimps Ahoy. In the episode, we learn that Sandy works for Tree Dome Enterprises, a company that is led by 3 chimp bosses called Professor Percy, Lord Reginald, and Dr. Marmalade. Throughout the episode, we see Sandy struggling to come up with inventions to impress them, as she fears that if she cannot come up with an invention that is good enough, the bosses could tell her to leave Bikini Bottom. However, Sandy, being the incredible genius she is, manages to come up with an invention just in time. An invention which makes the bosses extremely happy. So ultimately, the bosses decide that Sandy can stay for another 20 years in Bikini Bottom. And they even state that they'll increase her pay too.
I am going to offer you a 20-year contract with a substantial pay rise.
I accept.
So the 2 main things we learn from this episode are, number 1, Sandy is working for Tree Dome Enterprises. And number 2, she is getting paid by them to make inventions, which explains why she can afford to live in Bikini Bottom. But now the question is, what are the inventions being used for? Well, we also find out in the episode Chimps Ahoy that the purpose of Sandy being in Bikini Bottom is to study undersea life, aka the residents of Bikini Bottom. So that means that Sandy is making inventions to monitor the citizens of Bikini Bottom. That's pretty crazy. But what if I told you that one of those inventions, which might even be her best invention, has been in front of us this whole time? So now you may be thinking, there is no way Sandy could have made Karen. I mean, we all know that Plankton made Karen, and that she is his loving computer wife. However, there is actually a lot of proof to back up the theory that Sandy did in fact create Karen. For example, if you take a look at every time Plankton has tried to make an invention, especially a robot, you will see that the inventions always resemble him in some way. Whether that's having one eye, green skin, or just straight up being shaped like Plankton. So it's a bit strange for Karen not to resemble Plankton in any way. Not to mention, Plankton's inventions always end up breaking or exploding. Sandy's inventions, on the other hand, are nothing like her. They're creative and they seem to last a little bit longer. But there is one more important piece of evidence. If we go back to the episode Chimps Ahoy, we can see that Sandy has actually created a robot before that looks awfully similar to Karen. So is it that crazy to think that Sandy might have created Karen? I mean, just look at the 2 side by side. But now you may be thinking, okay, it might be possible that Sandy created Karen, but then why did Sandy create Karen? Well, like I said before, Sandy is being paid to create inventions that monitor the citizens of Bikini Bottom. So that must mean that Karen was also created to monitor the citizens of Bikini Bottom. But if this is true, why would Sandy decide to let Karen live with Plankton? Well, the answer is actually pretty simple. Sandy and Plankton are the only inventors in the whole of Bikini Bottom. So naturally, Sandy would want to keep Karen in a place where if she needed repairs, someone would be able to help her. Not to mention, the Chum Bucket doesn't get a lot of visitors. So it would be the perfect place for Sandy to hide her robot that spies on Bikini Bottom residents without being exposed. Okay, if this is all true, then there's an obvious question we haven't answered. Why don't we ever see Sandy hanging out with Plankton and Karen? Well, we actually do. Now, if you're like me, you might not be able to remember any times when Sandy has actually hanged out with Karen or Plankton. I mean, if Karen is Sandy's creation, Wouldn't she want to check up on Karen to see how she's doing? Well, there are actually many episodes where Sandy interacts with both Karen and Plankton. In the episode Salsa Imbecilius, Plankton accidentally turns all the residents of Bikini Bottom dumb, besides Karen and Sandy, who have to work together to fix Plankton's mess. In the episode Girls Night Out, we see Sandy and Karen decide to have a fun night out, where they prank Plankton, who is trying to steal the secret formula. In the episode Perfect Chemistry, we even see Plankton and Sandy work on an invention together. And in the episode Mimic Madness, we see Plankton and Sandy playing a friendly game of chess outside the chum bucket. So from all those examples, we can now establish that Sandy does interact with both Karen and Plankton. But here comes the crazy part. I'm about to tell you how Sandy's plan to use Karen for surveillance almost led to the destruction of the Bikini Bottom. So for this final part, we are going to have to take a look at the original SpongeBob movie. In the movie, we see Plankton discussing with Karen that he wants to steal the Krabby Patty secret formula. However, he has run out of plans. That's when Karen states that Plankton had forgotten about a plan, which was labelled as Plan Z.
Plan Z, here it is! Just like you said!
Plankton is confused when he sees Plan Z, because he doesn't remember coming up with it. And that's because he didn't come up with it. I believe Sandy and Karen had planted Plan Z, hoping that Plankton would follow along with it. But now the question is, why would Sandy and Karen plant Plan Z? Well, let's take a look at what Plan Z was actually about. Plan Z suggested that Plankton should put a mind-controlling helmet on all the citizens of Bikini Bottom. But now you may be wondering, how does this benefit Sandy? Well, if Sandy wanted to monitor all the citizens of Bikini Bottom, what better way than to place a helmet on every citizen in Bikini Bottom? That way, her job would be much easier. And as a result, she could even earn way more money. And yes, Sandy did have a helmet placed on her in the movie. But when she had the helmet on, she wasn't wearing her suit. So how is she breathing with the helmet on? That must mean that the helmet is actually an air tank, like her glass dome. Once again showing how Sandy is constantly covering up for her lies, so she isn't caught out. But now you know the truth. So there you have it. That's my theory on why I think Sandy was secretly hired to monitor the citizens of Bikini Bottom, resulting in Sandy creating Karen. Together, they came up with Plan Z to try and make Sandy's job more easy. However, the plan backfired and almost led to the destruction of the entire Bikini Bottom. But hey, do you believe this theory? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, all you cool jellyfish.
That's trippy. What do you think, Hassan? I think Sandy is a plant. Let's shoot. Tell me down in the comments what y'all think.